In 1938, the Nazi regime had taken hold of the Sudetenland, incorporating parts of Czechoslovakia into the Third Reich. One of the places under their control was the location of a small fortress and town just north of the Czech capital of Prague, used by Czech nobility as a vacation spot. In 1940, Gestapo had been instructed to turn this fortress, Theresienstadt, into a ghetto and concentration camp. It was to be built as a shiny facade for the final solution, a village complete with library, cafe, bank, and a vibrant cultural life. This camp had been selected by Heydrich to detain specific prisoners for a specific purpose, the deception of the rest of the world. The first group of Jewish people arrived at this camp, Theresienstadt, in 1941. The camp they found themselves in stands in high contrast to the labor camps and death camps built in other parts of the Reich. This camp was primarily a transit camp, a waypoint in which to hold prisoners, primarily from Bohemia and Moravia, until they could be moved elsewhere. The camp also held German and Austrian Jews for longer periods of time. In addition to these fleeting lives, Theresienstadt was a permanent holding place for select groups, namely the elderly, as a faux retirement and cultural center. Prisoners lived in painted barracks, planted gardens, and were allowed cultural programs, all to keep up the appearance of society. In addition to the elderly, artists, musicians, writers, philosophers, and playwrights all found themselves in the camp, alongside many women and children. These Jewish prisoners were to be used to create the impression that a happy life could be lived inside the barbed wire-topped walls of the camp. This kind of propaganda was employed for the Red Cross visit in June of 1944. Marie Alter and Hannah Mueller both speak to how the Germans responded to the visit.
I remember the day when the Red Cross came into Theresienstadt. They have been Swedish people and Swiss Red Cross. And they came to see if it's true that the Jews have it so good. They only went through certain streets, I think too, because these were the only street. We rubbed them with brushes, the street. And everything was made clean in these streets. Nobody was allowed to the windows or thing. The windows were covered. They put young girls on the track with lipstick on their lips and white blouses and things. Commedia. It was like an operetta for the Red Cross.
The children were told if somebody came to interview them, Seidel was the SS man there, the head, and they were supposed to get a box of sardines and say, Uncle Seidel, Sardinen schon wieder, that became the joke. Uncle Seidel, calling him Uncle Seidel. Schon again we are getting sardines. Of course we never ate or saw sardines, but here they was giving him, and so we are getting it again, it became such a joke.
The preparation of the Red Cross visit was heralded by a beautification of the camp, while concerts and plays were prepared for the visitors. Part of this beautification was addressing the heavy overpopulation of the camp, and so, leading up to the visit, many Jewish people were deported. In just 2 days, 7,503 people were sent to Auschwitz and their deaths. The camp was made nice for the visiting dignitaries and other forms of propaganda. Performances were given, and the dignitaries left feeling all was well. One such film is the one shown here. The reality of the camp was drastically different from that presented by the Nazis. About 140,000 Jews passed through the gates of Theresienstadt. Of those, approximately 90,000 were deported to other camps, with many going directly to Auschwitz or the other death camps. Many, however, never left the camp. Despite its tidy appearance, the living conditions in Theresienstadt were much like those in other camps. Overcrowding and sickness were constant blights that had to be combated. There is one other item that sets this camp and its victims apart from others, its culture. Because of the high concentration of varying kinds of artists and scholars held in Theresienstadt and the needs to maintain appearances, and therefore lives, a large amount of artwork, music, and writing survived the camp. Much artwork survives, including drawings belonging to the many children that passed through the camp. Additionally, Theresienstadt was also the only camp where religious practices could still be carried out. Hannah Mueller describes this culture in vivid detail.
But nevertheless, there was this tremendous, vibrating cultural life. I remember seeing Fledermaus on a whole production of Fledermaus. I remember going to poem reading. There were philosophical debates. There were concerts. There was this need to live very intensively. And I think this was about the essence of Theresienstadt. You had these few years, so you have to live them so intensively. You had to use every minute you had.
The people in Theresienstadt refused to allow the Nazis to strip them of their culture and their beliefs, precious things that allow people to connect to their humanity. Perhaps it was this refusal to bow to utter dehumanization that aided the 17,247 survivors of this camp.